Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Makija said, very rightly said that productivity is a major issue, especially into the Indian industry. If we look back uh, and comparatively, we see Indian workers' productivity is way below the world standard, especially if you take the countries like Germany, US, or Japan, which are on the top of it. But even if you come closer to China or you come closer to, the four tigers in terms of the Taiwan and all these countries, you will still find that our productivity levels are lower. Now, every industry would want to increase the productivity. COVID-19 has pushed a lot of technologies onto the manufacturing also. COVID-19 also has, in India, created the problem of the migrant workers. There is a crisis going on. And that fundamentally means is that the number of the workers available on the shop floor probably are lesser than what they could have been. When you have the lesser workers, you have idle, unutilized capacity. The only resource you turn to is to increase the productivity of the people whom you have got along with you. So productivity becomes a major tool to increase your business, and also not only that, even reduce the cost and so on and so forth. Okay. So in today's session, we're going to talk about what is productivity, how do you measure this productivity, what are the tools available, and also how can you improve this. The target audience for this, though it is also for the senior executive management and the production managers and so on, but largely it is focused onto the frontline leaders like the shop floor supervisors or the managers, who essentially are the ones who manage the teams on the shop floor. So in this entire session, we will be talking about few specific points. What is productivity? Why should you measure the productivity? There have to be certain reasons why do you want to measure the productivity? And if you have to measure the productivity, how do you do it? What are the tools available into it? We will talk about some of the tools which you can use for measuring the productivity. And then we will also talk about certain techniques which you can apply for improving your productivity. Finally, it's very important that not only you improve your productivity, you continuously measure it, but you also put in the systems to sustain the improvement in the productivity. Otherwise, it can have a spike into the productivity gains, but it can also very well, very quickly come down if you don't have the sustenance mechanisms into it. So we'll talk about these topics one by one. I'll try to explain certain concepts. I'll try to give an example, and let's see if you have any specific questions. We'll pick up those questions at the end of my talk, and then we'll try to address them. Okay. So what is productivity? And if I put it in the very, very simple terms, productivity is nothing but a ratio between the output and the input. Okay. Whatever is your output, you measure it, you divide it by the input provided over here. It's also a quantitative relationship between what we produce and what we have spent to produce that. So if we say that we have produced one car, what has gone into producing that car is the input into manufacturing that. And that's what we take the ratio. Okay. Some say philosophically that productivity is also an attitude, and it seeks a continuous improvement of what exists. Productivity improvement is not a one-time activity, it's a continuous activity. Even if we have achieved, let's say 10% or 15% or 20% improvement in our productivity, you can always find the ways of improving it further. So it's a continuous improvement activity, and it doesn't stop at one-time action only. Okay. So let's ask this question to ourselves, that why would we like to measure the productivity? Industries would measure the productivity for several reasons. Some would measure it, or some would like to know that what is their existing productivity to reduce and control the cost. Some would even want to understand that what can be the better estimation of their cost, because until and unless you have the measurements in place, you won't be able to identify your costing. And if the productivity is high but your costing is off, then also your business can be into doldrums. Productivity measurement also identifies that where are the, with your existing methods, where are the opportunities to improve upon them. We all feel that our methods are excellent. There is no room for improvement. Only when we measure them, we benchmark them, then only we realize that whether our existing methods also can be improved upon. Okay. When you do the measurement, it also provides a comparison to the alternative methods. So again, that can tell you whether there is a room for improvement. Productivity measurements also help us in improving our planning. We can identify the areas where if planning has been modified or planning has been focused upon, then it can also help us into increasing our overall output. Some use the productivity measurements for setting up the standards for workers. Activity norm is one factor. We'll talk about that as we go deeper into it. And productivity measurements also help us into understanding the performance of our employees. Since you can understand the performance of our employees, certain companies also use it for as a basis for calculating the incentives or even for negotiations with the labor unions. So labor unions then accordingly can identify, and you can negotiate with them saying that this is the minimum productivity level which we want to achieve, and for that this is the rate or the costing or other things which can be negotiated. So these are the reasons, some broad reasons why we measure the productivity. Okay, so as I said, productivity is a very large area and a vast topic. It's not very easy to understand how to measure the productivity in a 45-minute or 50-minute session. There are so many aspects to it. So what we are going to do is we are going to take up a case study and try to use this case study to understand the whole concept of what is productivity, how to measure it, and how to improve upon it. So let's take a case study. Let's say that there is a biscuit manufacturer who has set up a plant for around 500 metric tons of biscuit production in a single shift. Okay. He feels, the owner feels that plant is not running efficiently and his costs per unit are higher. He wants the productivity to be improved, but before that he doesn't know that what is his current productivity. So he mandates his plant manager that can you measure the current productivity ratio and also suggest the ways of improving it. What the plant manager does is that he calls his production supervisors, discusses the same with them. He also asks them that can we deploy certain tools, can we measure the productivity of our team over here, and then accordingly then suggest that what can be done to improve that. Improvements can come only when we know that what is our current standard, what is our current level. Then only we can identify that is that level already at the top or there is a room for the improvement. So the production supervisors, after some brainstorming, they all decide that they will first measure the current productivity level. And for that, they will use some kind of the focus areas. So they decided that why don't we first of all focus on the activity norms. What are the activity norms? Like if a particular operation has to be done, how much time it takes to do that particular operation. Okay. Is there a synchronization between the man and machine? If the machine is running at a certain speed and the man is supposed to feed it or is supposed to do certain parallel operations, are they synchronized well? And if they're not synchronized well, that's another area of improvement. So let's understand what is the synchronization between man and machine activities. Third area they identified is that let's focus upon the various wastages and resultant quality loss. Okay. Fourth, they identified that let's calculate overall equipment efficiency and also identify the fifth, the various non-value added activities which may be happening in the course of operations. Okay. As the plant keeps on running over a period of time, certain activities become redundant and it's necessary to identify them and then work upon removing them. So to measure that, among many tools which can be deployed, they decided to focus upon the 5 major tools. First tool they focused upon was the work studies and sampling. Second, they identified to create the man-machine charts. Third, they took the 8 wastages identified into the lean management and decided few among them. They also decided to calculate the OEE, which is the overall equipment efficiency, and also decided to create the value stream maps by studying the entire operations. Okay. What we will do is we will look into each of these tools in detail one by one, and we will try to understand that what these tools are all about and how they can be deployed and what the supervisors did to use these tools into their biscuit manufacturing. Okay. So the first tool is the work studies. Now, what is work study? Work study is a technique of work measurement to establish the time for a qualified worker to carry out a specific task under the specified conditions and at defined level of performance. In short, it tries to find out how much time a trained worker would take to complete a task consistently given the same set of situations. These are also called as the time and method studies. Some of them are also based upon the type of study you do. It could be time and motion study also. But largely they are all encapsulated under the work or the terminology called work studies. We use these work studies to understand and standardize the method of doing a work, to minimize the unit cost of production, to determine the standard time for doing a task, and to minimize the material and man movement. Okay. So having chosen this as one of the tools, supervisors decided that let's carry out the work studies to calculate the utilization ratios of manpower and machine idle time. They identified certain work areas where they wanted to carry out this entire study and then calculate the utilization ratios. The second tool which they went into was to decide the activity norms. Now, what are the activity norms? Activity norms define the optimum performance of a worker based on the work studies and sampling, along with some allowance for the work fatigue. When you keep on doing something repetitively, there will be work fatigue. So you always have the International Labour Organization defined allowances for managing the work fatigue. So you also include into that, and then come out and say that a worker, given the same set of the conditions, will be able to perform this operation repetitively into X amount of time, producing Y number of units. So they decided to find out what are the activity norms. Once you have the activity norms, you can set up the benchmarks for completing an activity or a task. It can be used to measure performance and identification of specific movement areas. Okay. So our supervisors decided that let's calculate the activity norm for the packing activity, because they felt that this is the most crucial and the manpower intensive activity in their plant. So they focused upon the packing area as the activity norm application. Once they started studying the entire thing, what they did is that they identified all these elements which were involved into doing a complete activity. They also did the multiple instances recording, and they identified that the mean time taken with the various people under the different situations was, let's say, 5.31 seconds for a one particular activity. Another activity was 60 seconds, and so on and so forth. They also measured that what number of units of operations could be done. And then they also identified that if you take so much time to complete one activity in an hour, in 60 minutes, how many times this activity can be done. They also measured that what were the engagement of this particular worker while doing this activity, and they also came out with a ratio. For an example, in this case, they identified that the manpower deployed on loading the hopper was involved or engaged only for 43%, and the activity norm was 678 times he could do this activity. Okay. Then they applied another tool called the work sampling. Now, the work sampling in work studies, while we focus on each element of activity and measure it multiple times to arrive at a mean number, in work sampling, we carry out random observations, because when we do the observations, maybe the situations have changed. maybe the workers deployed are different. So we try to, cover by the 100, 200 random observations. I try to understand. So work sampling then becomes a method in which the large number of instantaneous observations are made at random time intervals over a period of time or a group of machines, workers, or process and operations. So we study the ratio of working or idle times, we prepare a performance index, and establish the work measurement techniques. By doing this thing, that tells us that, what is the resource utilization and so on. So supervisors decided to do the work sampling to identify the resource utilization on a particular operation called mold changeover, and also identify the reasons for the non-utilization. Okay. So when they did this, they identified all the activities. They identified and categorized all these activities as a repetitive non-value added, or the repetitive non-value added but required, or setup time, or the occasional NVAR, or non-repeatable breakdown, and so on and so forth. So here we have captured that if the machine was running for 100 hours, the machine number 1, machine number 2, and machine number 3 respectively were stopped for 20%, 35%, and 20%. Okay. There were certain reasons they found out. They found out that majority of the time, the operator was switching off these machines for certain period, and this was probably happening because he was not getting the proper feed, or there were some other constraints which was holding it up over here. So this area was identified over here, and using that they started focusing upon what can be the areas where we can improve upon, how can we reduce the primary machine switching off and increase the utilization. The next tool that they try to use is man-machine charts. Okay. Man-machine activity charts are used basically to describe or plan the interactions between workers and machine over a period of time. It also deals with criteria of work elements and the time for both the workers and the machine. It also helps in understanding relationship between working time and idle cycles of operator and machines. This helps overall in analyzing the ways to reduce the idle time. So in this particular case, again, they said that let's study the utilization of man and machine in the mold changeover, and also identify the reasons for the non-utilization. So this is another study they carried out using this tool man-machine chart. And when you set up a man-machine chart, you usually make the observations against the workers and machine. You also draw a chart based upon the time limit to see the relationship between man and machine. You calculate the utilization based on the idle time each one is having. So if you see over here, the manpower 2 is quite a lot idle, while the manpower 1 is quite engaged. And you can see that sum total also, manpower 1 is 90%, while the manpower 2 is only 42% engaged over here. So this calculation also tells us that what is the idle time each one is having. Okay. So they created this man-machine chart also to understand that where we are losing the time, efforts, and overall productivity. The next area they focused upon was that what are the 8 wastages in which we should focus on. So before we go into what are the wastages that they focus upon, let's quickly have a word about the 8 wastages which are very prominently focused upon in a lean manufacturing. So defect is the first wastage, which is nothing but a waste from a product or service failure to meet the customer expectation. If customer expects a certain quality level or certain form and factor and then size and whatever, if it doesn't meet the expectation, it's called a failure and it's a wastage. Overproduction, that is the wastage from making more products than the customer demands. Third, waiting. If I'm spending the time waiting for the next process to occur, then that's again a waiting wastage. Transportation, which is wasted time, resource, and cost when I'm unnecessarily moving the products and the material. Okay, this could be for multiple reasons. Maybe because there is a distance between 2 stations and I have to move it, but I could move the stations closely and I could reduce my transportation time. Inventory, when I have the excess products and materials that are not the processes, that's a wastage and is not a useful thing. Motion, wasted time and effort related to unnecessary movements by people. There's another wastage which gets created. Extra processing, waste related to more work or higher quality than is required is called extra processing. And the last one is the unused talent. We may have the highly capable people, we may not be utilizing them fully, their skill and knowledge. That's also a wastage. So these are the 8 types of the wastage in the lean management which we focus upon. Our supervisors in the biscuit factory decided that let's focus on material wastage and rework, and second, focus on the excess man movement. So these are the areas which they started focusing upon. So when they did the study for that, they found out that, first of all, they created and they studied the material flow diagram, which is basically if there is an input into a process, what is the output, what is the process loss, what is the wastage into that, and so on and so forth. And that's where they realized that there was a 25% wastage of the material happening in the different processes. The red circles, sum total is close to 25% over here. Okay, and they were for multiple reasons over here. Good news was that most of this material was recyclable, but still it did consume the time and increase the processing cost. Okay, so now having understood this, supervisors probably can work upon the root cause of this material wastage. They can use multiple systems, multiple tools like YY analysis, brainstorming, method improvements, and so on to find out that how they can reduce the wastage. So this is another area which they deployed and tried to find out. The next thing that they tried to find out was they tried to create a spaghetti diagram, which was that if they had to do an operation from the start to finish, what was the movement which was done from one station to another station, including picking up the material and putting down the material and various processes you go through. And that's where they found that their movements were quite zigzag. They were traversing back and forth between the multiple stations. And that was again another opportunity which they could identify for the improvement. If you save the movement, obviously you're saving the time, effort, and also money at the end of the day. Okay. The other tool which they had identified earlier was to calculate the overall equipment efficiency. Now, this was because when they did the man-machine thing, and when they also did some studies, they also found that there was some kind of frequent breakdown. One of the supervisor had the observation. So he said, let's calculate the OE and then find out that what is the machine availability. So what is OE? OE is nothing but overall equipment efficiency, which is a ratio of fully productive time to plant production time. If the machine can be available for 12 hours, what production was taken against that is the ratio which we try to find in the overall equipment efficiency. It measures how well a manufacturing operation is utilized compared to its full potential. Okay. This also helps in identifying losses, benchmarking progresses, and improving the productivity of the manufacturing equipment. Supervisors here decided to focus on the machine availability. Okay. So when they started capturing the data, they found certain things. But let's first see that what were the OE they could find. So OE is calculated using a formula called availability multiplied by quality multiplied by performance. So in this particular case, they found that their OE was around 75%. Now in a normal scenario, you would say 75% performance is pretty good. But when you have a large batch manufacturing, like biscuit manufacturing, which is a continuous process till the batch gets over, you would be looking up at 90, 95, or maybe more than 95% as an OE. So definitely there was a concern over here. And then they also found that when the machine was running for 10 hours, 12, suppose was supposed to run for 12 hours, it ran only for 10 hours, which gave it an availability ratio of 83%. There was nearly 2 hours spent as idle time, either during the breakdown or the shift changeovers. So again, this is something which supervisors thought that they can identify and work upon improving the idle time. So that is the next thing that they worked upon. The last tool they had identified and said that let's create a value stream map. So value stream maps are, or as you call them, the VSMs, are nothing but a flow charts which identify the waste, reduce process cycle times, and implement the process improvement. So these charting mechanism, if done properly, can identify that what are your cycle times, what kind of the wait periods in between you have got, what kind of the wastage is occurring at each step, how much resource deployment is happening at each step, and is it worth it or not. So they decided to use this to identify the non-value added activities happening in the entire process of the packing operation. Okay. As they ran the entire thing, they identified that uh, one of the area, they were spending almost 20 minutes as a wait period, and this 20 minutes was spent because people were taking up the filled boxes and shifting them to the other packing station where the taping was to be done. Now this needed the boxes to be lifted up and shifted to the next station, and the operator had to come back, and this activity back and forth was taking almost 20 minutes. So they identified that this is a non-value added activity. Maybe we can work upon improving this. So using this entire set of the tools, they started calculating the productivity. They realized that their per shift production is 58,000 units using the 4 machines, which means that they are producing 232,000 units per shift. They had the manpower of 22 people per shift, and that results into 10,545 units per manpower. Okay. So they identified 10,545 as the productivity ratio right now into their existing operation. Their OE was calculated at 75%, and all the tools which they had deployed, they validated that this unit was right number. And they also, using those measurement tools, also identified the various areas where the productivity can be improved upon. Okay. So having identified the various tools, various areas where the productivity can be now improved, what they started doing was they started focusing upon that what tools we need to do, what tools we can use to improve this productivity. Can it be focusing on the wastage and deploy certain tools towards that? Should we focus upon improving our work methods, existing methods, so that we can save some time and efforts over there? Can we use the activity norms found out and then set them as the standard for the workers to work against, and then accordingly even see that whether the workers require some training or something to improve their working. So they started identifying the various areas where the improvement can be done. And as they started doing that, they focused upon the 3 specific areas of the improvement. One, they identified the waste elimination. So VSM, material flow diagrams, spaghetti charts, and so on had identified where the material and movement waste could be eliminated. Okay. If you remember, we talked about zigzag movements between the stations. We talked about a lot of material wastage happening while doing certain operation, and also the unwanted movements between one station to another station. So those were the areas which were identified. So they decided that let's focus on eliminating that. And then they also decided that let's do certain kaizens to improve upon these areas. The second area they focused upon was the setup time reduction, where they said that can we reduce the setup time for the molder and then improve the productivity. The third area, since the work studies had been done, sampling had been done, activity norms calculations were done, and they had identified that our manpower utilization was not optimal. Even the machine utilization was not proper. So they decided to do the line balancing and resource optimization, which could give them improved manpower and machine utilization. So they started focusing upon these areas to improve upon. Okay. Now, when you go into this, definitely you have to deploy certain tools. There can be multitude of tools which could be used. They decided to focus upon some of the tools which are line balancing, implementation of the activity norms, changeover time reduction, maybe work standardization, elimination of the wastage by certain, method improvements and kaizens and so on and so forth. And even, training of the employees so that people understand that what they have to do more effectively. Okay. Some other things also can be done, like the kaizens, quality circles, Gemba walks. These are other methods by which you can carry out the improvement. So they decided to focus upon some of them. So first thing, what they focused upon was excess movement. So they first focused upon relaying out the plant in such a way, or relay out of the equipment locations in such a way that the zigzag movement which was there could be streamlined to a sequence of this, a sequential movement in such a way that to complete my activity from beginning to the end, I really don't have to do back and forth. Now, if I can avoid that, that can avoid a lot of movement for me. And not only it avoids a lot of movement for me, it can also reduce a lot of work fatigue. Okay. So when they did this, some of the impact, when they started calculating, they realized that in some of these operations, just by relaying it out, they were actually saving closer to 4 kilometers of the man movement along with the material. Okay. Now, this is not a small thing. Okay. So 4 kilometers of daily walking, extra walking with the material in the hand is a huge, wastage. Just by relaying out the station, they could save this much, walking. So this is one improvement which they could bring in over here. Okay. Now, the second area they started focusing upon was that let's focus upon reducing the material wastage. So supervisors improve the machine availability, first of all, by balancing the line and eliminating the frequent stoppages. And as they started doing that, the material started passing smoothly from one station to another station. That itself stopped the material accumulation happening before the critical operation of the packing was taken up. This itself focused into lesser material wastage and accumulation before the packing. Right? Once this entire line balancing was done, this also helped them to reduce the wastage by 3% and also help them to eliminate the work in progress, which in longer run will further help them to improve the productivity. Okay. The other area which they went was the value stream map had identified that they were spending 20 minutes extra in moving the package, the box, after stuffing to a tipping machine which was 1.25 meter away. So if you take the round mechanism or the round travel of the operator is 2.5 meter. But if that 2.5 meter is done 580 times during the day, then that also becomes 1.5 kilometer. Okay. So just by moving the machine from being far away, by aligning it and putting it next to that, they could save this time of moving the box from one machine to another machine. That also resulted into 1.5 kilometer of the saving on a daily basis, which would have saved them now 20 minutes of the operations. Okay. So these are some of the small things the studies told them that how these improvements can be done. They deployed this tool to improve this area and save substantially. Taking the changeover time, when they looked into the mold, they also took those activities based upon this internal non-value added activity, non-value added activity, and so on and so forth. They categorize them into also the internal and external activity. When we go in the setup time reduction, we essentially focus on the activities which are external and we try to bring them into the internal side so that they can happen in parallel. If we have the manpower available, we can do them in parallel. Then the external activity which becomes sequential can be reduced and we can reduce our changeover time. So they try to do that and then they reduce the external activity and the non-value added activities over here. And by that, they could reduce the 12% time in changing over the mode. Now, 12% reduction in the changeover again means that 12% time is available for the production. So this was another thing using the man-machine chart and the data identified. They applied the single minute exchange of die concept and then improved the setup time over here. Okay. The next they did was they had identified that the biscuit loading into the hopper was not effectively happening. The biscuit hopper loading was happening at a very underutilized rate. They also identified that the packing machine was the fastest machine in the entire setup. And since it was the fastest machine, it was also the bottleneck because the other machines could not produce to that particular level. So since that was happening, they identified that as a bottleneck. So they decided to increase the utilization by merging the two machines at a hopper loading station, which increased the throughput over here. And they also did some kind of a method improvement by which they eliminated the box tipping operation altogether. So that also increased the utilization at the box filling station. By doing these two things itself, they eliminated one method, one operation. They increased the capacity utilization of the machine over here. Okay. So again, this was found out from the study which they did, work with method studies, and this helped us. So by doing this thing, they could do the resource utilization, and what it resulted into was that hopper loading machine manpower was reduced by 40% on the 4 stations. Overall, 18% of the labor productivity was improved. This was achieved by reducing the 4 manpower, because we reduced that 50%. So from each station, from 2 people deployed per station, they could bring it down to 1 person per station. 4 people were taken out. So out of the 4, out of the 22, 4 people were reduced, and productivity was increased by 18% over here itself. Okay. Now that since the 4 people were also taken away, if you calculate their 26 man days of the work and then calculate the overall wages, they also save 36,400 rupees per month. So not only they increased the throughput, they increased the overall efficiency, they also saved the money on the wages over here. Okay. So that was the other improvement they could bring in. They did all these things using the various tools. One of the major tools they used was Kaizen. Kaizen is a Japanese term. It's made up of the 2 words, Kai, which is change, and Zen, which is the good. Okay. So Kaizen is essentially an employee-driven process where the employees make number of continuous improvement efforts. Okay. Supervisors encourage their team to undertake several Kaizens so that they could improve the productivity based on the analysis and measurement done earlier. They normally focus, or they specifically focus on the changeover time reduction, wastage elimination in terms of the material and movement, and improving the machine utilization. So Kaizen helped them to achieve this overall, productivity. When they re-looked back at the productivity and remeasured it, they found that their productivity had gone up by 18% in terms of the labor productivity. Overall machine availability had gone up by 6%, and OE, when recalculated, had gone up to 84%, which is a 9% increase on the earlier calculation. Okay. The wastage level had been reduced to 3%, and overall wastage from 25% came down to 22% by using the line balancing. So they definitely moved up in terms of the overall efficiency over here. Okay. Again, if we look back, they could save 36,400 rupees per month. They could also produce 13,920 more packets. They could improve the methods, their existing methods on the loading and packing station overall. They could also standardize the work for the workers by setting up the activity norms, identifying and implementing the SOPs, and so on. And overall, the productivity increased to 13,662 packets per manpower from the earlier 10,545. So this brought in an increase of 29%. Also remember that since the number of the people were also reduced, the division factor of 22 also went down to 18%, which also helped into improving the productivity ratio. So that's how they went into improving the overall productivity. Okay. Having achieved the productivity ratios and improved it by 29% or so, it also became very apparent to the supervisors that you can improve the productivity, but if you don't implement the sustenance practices, the productivity improvement cannot be sustained for long. So they also went ahead and said that let's decide that what can be done to sustain these kind of the activities or sustain these measurement tools which have been deployed and the whole productivity which has been achieved. So they carried out large number of trainings, extensive training to all the people involved on the shop floor. This included the workers, operators, and even the other supervisors who were not engaged in this exercise. They focused on training them on how the line balancing was done, how the resource optimization is done, how the changeover reduction can be achieved, how the activity norms can be established, and how you have to work against the activity norms, how to carry out the small kaizens to continuously improve upon things, how to manage the waste, how to standardize your work, and so on and so forth. They also created certain checklists and gave it to the people that they should be able to work against the checklist if they forget certain activities. So checklists could help them out. Okay. They also decided to train them on the 5S and visual management, visual control practices, so they can be implemented, and then that can be a way of sustaining these improvements. So large amount of the training was done to make workers and operators, the team, aware about the ways of making these things effective. Next, they implemented a lot of 5S and visual control. So they implemented the floor mappings. They laid out the floor markings to say that where to move the material from, what material should be kept where, and so on and so forth. They also laid out how to maintain the work in progress, material and inventory properly. They also created a lot of visual boards which could tell them that have they met their plan? Are the activity norms being met? Is the breakdown happening and meeting the criteria as identified? Is the setup or the changeover time is happening as per the, again, the norms established or not? So they created a lot of visuals and the production control boards, which operators and workers could understand and then see whether their performance was up to the level as required. They also worked upon standardizing the work. So when they had done the study earlier, they also identified that, the machine was running at 190 packets per minute. They found out that machine can actually run effectively on 200 packets per minute. So they laid down a rule saying that the machine against a particular material has to run at 200 packets per minute. They changed the parameters, and once they changed the parameter and they trained the people accordingly and set the operating parameters, they could see the increase into the productivity or increase in the production as well. So they also operationalized and standardized the packing machine operations and the parameters as well. So that again helped in sustaining these increased productivity ratios. The next was they did, they created checklist. So this checklist could be handed over even to the operators. So people could, themselves verify that are they doing the work as required or not. And they also created certain audit checklists which the supervisors could also use to do the rounds and to audit and see that people are, working against the standard set, activity norms identified, practices established, SOPs established, and so on and so forth. So they also established this. So this again, identifies and tells them that if there is a deterioration into the productivity, they know to immediately catch it and then again, work upon it. Maybe train the people, maybe help them to understand it better, maybe support them, maybe carry out more Kaizens, maybe fine tune the machine operations, whatever it requires to sustain the productivity levels. Okay. So that is what they did that. So once you have sustained these operations, once you have put in the sustenance mechanisms in place, what happens is that you not only are ensured that your productivity levels will be sustained, even the team gets motivated and team also gets ready to continuously, constantly look around and see that how we can improve our productivity. So if you remember earlier, we said that productivity is also nothing but a state of mind. Once you see the improvements, you realize that what all can be done. You start believing into it. You start believing that yes, productivity can be increased by small actions. And that creates an attitude that you can continuously improve the productivity, and you can always go above what you are already doing. So what you have done yesterday can be better today, and tomorrow can be far better than even today also. So that's a kind of attitude which starts coming in once the productivity improvement starts going down. So overall, I think instead of going into more details about each of the topic and so on and so forth, I thought I'll take a case study, try to put in some of the tools and mechanisms and try to explain this. Because as I said, 50 minutes, 45 minutes is too less a time to explain this entire thing in depth. So what did we learn over here? If I summarize it quickly, what are the lessons over here? Probably there are three important lessons. Number one, measuring the productivity of the shop floor team and operations is a very important role which supervisors in play. Okay, so this is not something which has to come from the executive management. This is a role of the supervisors. If they understand, if they know about this, if they're trained well, then the supervisors themselves can measure and improve the productivity on the shop floor. Okay, it's within their own purview of the activities. Supervisors can use several tools like the work studies, sampling, activity norms, man-machine charts, value stream mappings, multitude of them, spaghetti diagrams, material flow diagrams, and so on and so forth, to measure the current productivity levels and identify improvement opportunities. Okay. And supervisors can further use various techniques to improve the productivity, and he can continuously remeasure them to identify that where the improvements can be brought in. So this is something which supervisor himself or herself can do it on the shop floor. And for that, you don't need the involvement of the senior management per se. This is very much in the purview or within the scope of the supervisory role. Okay. Also, measuring and improving the productivity is a continuous process. Supervisors must continuously focus upon them. They should not take it as a one-time activity. Every day, there is some area or the other operation which can always be improved upon. If they maintain a focus upon it, they can ensure that their productivity, their plant, their operation, their team is actually highly productive, highly efficient, and is always producing fantastically compared to the other teams relatively. So this is a quick overview of what tools supervisors can use to measure the productivity and how can they improve the productivity overall. What are the techniques of improving the productivity? Okay. So that's the end of my presentation. Over back to Dr. Makhija and Kishore. If there are any specific questions which have come.
Thank you very much, sir, for your enlightening session. And definitely there is at least one question which we have received. The question is from Nilesh Burate. And the question is how 6% availability improved using work sampling?
So we essentially, when we started identifying that what are the areas, when we did the random sampling, we identified that there are certain operations where the operations were not being done as per the activity norms. There were a lot of non-value added activities which were happening. There were a lot of wait period which were happening. The team then worked upon removing those wait periods, non-value added activities, and they also pushed by training the workers and operators to adhere to the activity norms identified. Okay. And that is where by the multiple activities, multiple actions, 6% availability, 6% improvement was found out. This was also found out onto the machine, because if there is an idle time on the machine while I'm waiting for a process to get over, or the operator is not putting attention over there, then machine is going to be idle. So this idle time was also addressed by that.
Okay. Sure. So thank you very much, sir. Like in the beginning, you also kind of confirmed that in Indian economy, per employee productivity internationally is very low. So what could be the reason, 2 or 3 top reasons why we are not faring very well in terms of productivity per person?
Very right question. Number one, if we actually think about it, our workers, our shop floor workforce is not very appropriately formally trained on doing their work. None of these workers, whether they are contract or casual or they are employed people, receive a formal training on how exactly they are supposed to perform their work. So they do their best, but not as per the best practices. So that's one area. Second thing is that most of the time, even the supervisors are the people who have graduated to a supervisory level just by the sheer number of years spent on the job. They have not learned the various techniques to measure the performance. They have not learned the various tools which can help them to monitor and manage the performance. So that is where the basic constraints start coming in. So even if the productivity level could be higher, there's no monitoring which is taking place, and people do not know that what is the right way of doing it. So they're doing their best, but that best is not sufficient from the overall perspective.
So what you have said is that at the worker level, it's a capability issue, and at the supervisor level, it's a leadership issue. Is this
I would slightly add few more things into it. It's not just a leadership. It's a basically competency issue to understand the tools, methods, practices, and deploy them.
Right. Since I graduated from a contributor to a supervisory role, and leadership skill involved understanding why my team is not able to perform, or even measurement of my team's performance is one of the leadership qualities. I'm not talking about the leadership, psychological leadership quality, but the technical leadership quality as well.
True.
Since these two aspects are missed, and you have been consulting a lot of Indian entrepreneurs, a lot of industrialists. So don't you think that it's a reflection of the industrialist mindset rather than the worker or the supervisory problem?
Well, slightly out of scope, but definitely until and unless the entrepreneurs or the business owners focus upon the productivity, the supervisors or the workforce is not going to focus on it, because nobody is driving them to improve the productivity. If we take our example here also, until and unless the owner of the factory decided to look in the productivity and increase it, the supervisors didn't look into it. But having put that as an agenda, supervisors definitely quickly found out how to do that, right? So it has to be driven top down. But at the same time, we also need to ensure that our workforce is enabled and empowered to undertake these kind of activities.
Right. Perfect. Coming back to the same question, there is another complementary question to that, is 29% productivity is in line with demand of biscuits?
Yes. So actually the reason for calling for this study to be done was that the factory was not able to meet the demand while the orders were existing. The backlog was huge. And that's where there were two mindsets which were going on. One was that either improve the productivity or start the second shift. So thought was that let's start focusing on the productivity improvement first before starting the second shift, because the second shift would have meant larger operational expenses. So this is in line with that.
Okay. So now after lockdown, skill labor shortage will be there. How to enhance skill to improve productivity, as time study activity should be performed on qualified operator?
So until and unless you do the work studies, you do the work sampling, maybe even you do some kind of the other industrial studies as well, you won't be able to identify that what are the operations where you can have your existing manpower, reduce manpower, handle the overall workload. So work studies, work sampling, other related industry studies will be very much important to identify the areas where a qualified operator can improve his productivity and sort of mitigate the challenge which is coming up from the shortage of the skilled labor.
Perfect. Thank you very much, sir. And that's all from the question side. And I have been receiving a lot of comments which say that it has been a very informative session, and they are thanking you for this session. So thank you very much for taking time out and telling us that improving your bottom line, you just need not concentrate on your employee cost only, but maybe if you could improve the employee productivity, that would also help. So thank you very much for this. And before we log off, Kishore Bhai, if you have anything to say.
I just want to thank all of you, Makhidia sir for your time, and Atul sir for your time. I think in this time of crisis, when majority of industries are suffering, cost optimization and the optimized proper utilization of resources would play a crucial role. So I think the tools and the techniques that Atul sir just shared, in long run, it is going to help like anything. And I would just like to share with all of our participants that our university, along with Skill Intelligent, would be starting technical trainings shortly once the lockdown gets over. We would be offering the customized solutions, customized trainings to all the industries. And we have launched a series of webinars, and once in a week we will be having the webinars on different topics, wherein Atul sir, other experts from Skill Intelligent will also join us. So again, at the closing, I would thank management of our university, Vikrant sir, and Atul sir for being with us, sharing your knowledge with our participants, and we look forward for such informative sessions in coming future. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Makhija and Kishore.
Thank you,
It
sir.
was really good to share this experience, and definitely we look forward to many more sessions. And as Kishore said, that once the lockdown is over, we look forward to actually helping the companies in implementing these practices and improve their productivity. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Stay home, stay safe.